gin. Gin is indeed the vice of man. I think. I don't know. There's a song in there, probably.
There is.
Whiskey is the life of man, so
Yes.
gin is the vice of man.
And Scotch is the lice of man.
And vodka is the ice of man.
And amaretto is of mice and man.
Really? That's what that was about. I knew that there was a hidden underlying
meaning. It was about
meaning.
bougie liqueur the whole time.
Liqueur. All right, there's people. We're doing a show.
I feel like we need to
adjust the camera just a bit.
Because
Bring it down just a hair. Bring it down. Good day to you. I am David Anthony, the Foxy Bard.
And I'm Twig.
And welcome to Foxy's History Hour. And you'll notice that our maps are. I've got Africa over here, and I've got Europe over here. They're down here. We don't need the maps today. We don't need maps today because we're going much more abstract than that. We're going abstract enough that we don't need a map.
We're going to talk about a concept as opposed to a person or an event.
Indeed. So we don't really need maps. But you know what I do need to do is two things. Number one, I need to zoom in so I can see the comments.
Well, you're in luck. There aren't any yet.
Oh, there will be, I presume. But also, and by the way, if you are out there, and I know that some of you are out there, feel free to leave comments. Let me know who you are and that you're here, and
that you like what you're hearing,
and that you enjoy what you're hearing.
Even though it's only a minute and a half in.
Yes, indeed, and feel free to click the like button and subscribe for more content and what have you.
More content.
So that way, the algorithm, yes, indeed. So, and that's comments. Alcohol. The gin is gone. I still got some whiskey. It's all right.
Listen,
I didn't really like the gin all that much.
Oh, well, as you imagine, I really liked it. But to my defense, we also used it as the mystery booze last week. So it was already mostly gone by the time I got to it. I
see that Sullivan is here. It is not just you. Oh, no, about the video being fuzzy. Let's give this a try.
Oh, you saw it as Vermont Red Fair.
Fantastic.
Oh, we still even have the pins on.
Oh, do we? Do we? Yes. Okay, so that actually brings us to our first confession of the day.
Confess us, in it.
Thank you very much. And that confession is that I don't know if we're going to be doing the history hour on Tuesday nights in the future. We might move it to Wednesday night.
We also probably aren't going to be doing it consistently.
We might make it an every other week thing.
Once a month,
because,
maybe, depending on the month.
Because last weekend we went to our first fair of the year. This past weekend, the Vermont Renaissance Fair, and still got our little participant ribbons on us, and it was fun. It was glorious.
It was glorious.
It was enjoyable.
It was really, really tiring.
It was so exhausting. We've been sitting here, looking out there, just being very, very confined
and stationary
for a year and a half, and we have grown soft and squishy. And it is time for us to not be soft and squishy. It is time for us to go back out into the field.
It's a very long way of saying
like
that he spent the entire weekend working and now he's tired.
Yes, indeed.
Me too, really.
So today
we got people watching from that same fair that we were just at.
Yes, indeed.
Anyways,
and Kathy is here.
If you want to see us do more music, by the way, tune in on Thursday night 9.
So yeah, we need to actually make those events for that thing.
You can see us do some music, but for now, we're going to do
some history. Now talk some history, and today's show is going to be a lot less structured than it usually is, and it's usually not that structured.
So that's saying something.
So with that being said. Today we are going, because this is June, for at least a couple more days. Good day to you, Clifton. Good to see you.
And Kathy.
And yes, I said Kathy earlier.
Oh, you did? Oh, I forgot already because my brain is pudding.
That's all right. Let's make it a bit more pudding. We're going to talk about the gay.
The gays.
It's Pride Month.
The gays TM.
It is Pride Month. So we shall talk about the gays TM. Trademark. So yeah, but we're talking about a concept here. So talking about a concept means that this is going to be very unstructured. It's not like I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, I usually have some sort of a narrative structure. So let's just kind of go around the world a little bit. First of all, I would like to, of course, address the gay scholarly elephant in the room, which is a question of whether or not you can refer to any pre-20th century person or pre-late 19th century at the earliest, as gay. Whether can you even say such a thing? Because the idea of being gay, as opposed to fancying a particular type, because being gay is an identity, and it's something you are rather than something you enjoy or something you do. It's something you are, and there's a culture behind it, and symbols and flags.
Well, here's the thing.
And none of that existed before the 19th century. Although boys still were boys, and boys would be boys, and girls would be girls, and boys would like boys, and girls would like girls.
Obviously, it depended on the culture.
Yeah.
You know, we have extreme variances from culture to culture. And the concept of, being gay as part of your identity specifically is more on the modern side, and it kind of results from, very strict years of oppression.
Of course, everything I just said, by the way, was very Eurocentric.
Very Eurocentric.
I'll admit,
well, although
because there are other cultures where that do have an identity. We'll get to that.
Although it should be said that there are a number of cultures actually that have being gay or being trans, or what we would consider to be gay or trans or bi or whatever, as part of just their general culture. However, with the spread of Western imperialism, those aspects of many different cultures have been very, very heavily repressed, especially in places that have been colonized.
Indeed.
So
colonization
those
does play its
aspects
part.
may not be as prominent as they were in medieval or ancient or what have you, as they are, and then they might be very more subtle now. They might have been present back then, and now they're completely illegal because Westerners don't like gay, and they impose that on everybody else. But it's also a lot of. It's not just Western. It's also a lot of different. Again, there's extreme variance here.
Indeed. So that being so, having addressed that elephant, how about we just take a little bit of a tour around the world, a bit of a gay tour of the world? Does that sound good to you? By the way, hello, Strawberry 124. I would just go with Strawberry. It's easier to say it that way. You remember they bought the CD?
There were
the family.
Oh, the family who bought.
I'm pretty sure if I'm interpreting the comment correctly. Although their mother was there, and the mother requested a thing, and
yes.
I think I'm remembering the right thing.
Yes, there were a lot of people who bought CDs, which is great for us. But I believe we know.
That we know who you are, whom you are. But yes, let's take a little gay tour around the world. So because it helps my brain as far as putting things in some sort of order. Let's go with the migration of humanity.
Are we going? What year?
So let's start in Africa.
Are we talking the emergence of modern Homo sapiens?
Well, I prefer to go just to more travel geographically rather than strictly chronologically.
Okay.
Let's see where that goes.
Okay, fine.
I don't know. I'm also feeling tired. We might call it early at some point today. So let's start in Africa.
All right.
So first of all, I was doing some reading up on stuff. Apparently in Lesotho there is a traditional female marriage dealy thing that exists in that culture.
Very fancy.
That's where you have a what would be called marriage in Western culture. That exists. There is also but let's go a little bit further north from that. I'm just spitballing just random little factoids. I found out a lot of little random factoids. Apparently in the Congo there is a whole warrior culture involved with men being where a man will have a lover, another man who is a lover who is also a warrior. He's a warrior. They're a warrior, and they fight for each other and they fuck each other afterwards, not during. That would be a bad idea. Goodbye,
monetization.
That's all right. It's all right. The monetization for this comes from the Patreon. It's all right. But so there's that. Yes, the one with the cousin. Remember? And I thought they were sisters.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but I didn't really find very many details about that. So let's go a little bit further north to Egypt, where I can actually get into the world of written history. And because I understand written stuff a little bit better. So I did I did a little bit of reading. And by the way, if you have any relevant information, because I know you were doing some reading as well.
I was, but
and I've kind of determined the format of where we're going, which is just
trying to
geographically.
gauge your structure. Okay,
We're just kind of moving around
You're
geographically.
still in Africa, aren't you?
We're still in Africa. We're still in Egypt. Didn't find very much about gay in Africa. A little bit. I found a little bit about gay in Africa. Basically, that was all I found, aside from Egypt. So let's go to Egypt, because I found a couple interesting things about Egypt. First of all, in Egypt, we have what is possibly the first recorded gay couple in history.
What?
So there's that.
Okay.
I think that's neat.
Okay.
I've got their names too. I wrote them down because I don't think I can pronounce them right. So let's try this. Khumhotep. I think that's right. I think that's the easy one. Khumhotep. And then the other and the other fella. I'm ready for this. Nyankhunum.
Okay.
Nyankhunum.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm doing that right.
In what way were these people gay?
Okay, so here's the thing about these guys. So these were two advisors to the pharaoh. Which pharaoh was it? Nusere. That's an easy name to pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a lot of the pharaohs have easy to pronounce names, but the servants all have complicated, difficult to pronounce names.
You need to stay on the point.
Point. We're not talking about Egyptian nomenclature and how badly I mispronounce it. So yeah, these were two advisors to the pharaoh, and basically what is found of them, what we know, we know a little bit about their careers as advisors to the pharaoh, but the big bit of evidence that would point to them having a relationship is that they share a tomb, like they share a sarcophagus.
Oh, that's pretty intimate.
That is pretty intimate, and so they've got a tomb where they share a sarcophagus together. And also the tomb paintings, the frescoes in the tomb depict them in life and depict them in very intimate postures. Do you know anything about not sexual?
Intimate.
Intimate.
Okay.
Not
we
sexual.
Are talking about.
We're not talking sexual.
We're
not talking
sexual.
We're not talking intimate. But no. We're talking. Although I did find porn.
Goodbye.
We'll get to that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about a loving, pretty relationship, wholesome relationship first, and then we'll talk about porn.
Can't wait.
It's going to be great. So when I say intimate, I don't mean sexual as far as the images go, but I am talking romantically intimate.
Okay.
Like these are the sorts of poses. Like when it comes to Egyptian art, these are the sort of poses that you would usually associate with a romantic couple.
Okay.
So like the pose where they're like it's in that kind of that 2D Egyptian kind of way where the shoulders are forward with the faces like this and they're kind of coming together and the hands are all awkwardly, but they're holding hands like that. But yes, like that kind of thing, and they're really close together with their noses touching. That's the thing.
Oh, it isn't.
Yes, that's a pose of intimacy.
Yeah.
In Egyptian art. I learned about Egyptian art. It's great. So.
All right,
so yeah, possibly history's first recorded gay couple where we know their names.
A quick side note about basically most historical gay people is that there's not very much in the way of what a lot of historians and anthropologists would call concrete evidence to suggest that these people were queer. And basically, what they mean is that there isn't like some kind of document above whatever it is and being like, and this person was queer, so unless it's completely written out in stone or paper or whatever, it can be argued that like, well, maybe they weren't gay, maybe they were just roommates or really
tombmates in this case.
Dun, 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 dun.
Hey, I thought that was funny.
Or, what have you. So there is going to be a lot of, contestation about this kind of thing.
Indeed.
But really, when you see two people buried together and also in several portraits of intimate poses,
they were probably lovers. And so there's that. There's also a pharaoh that may have been gay. Different pharaoh. Much later. So that gay couple that we just discussed, that was from 2400 BC or so. So Old Kingdom. So then you have another one from around 2000 BC or so, Pepi II. Is it 2000?
Pepi?
Yes.
His name's Pepi?
Pepi. The second.
Is he a meme?
What? No, his name's Pepi. This is an Egyptian name, Pepi, P-E-P-I. Actually, it's in hieroglyphs. I don't know how to spell it in hieroglyphs because I don't know how to read hieroglyphs. Or Demotic.
All right.
Or any of those things.
All right, fine.
I'm lucky to know how to read Hebrew. Pepi. His name is Pepi. What do you want?
I don't know. Get to the point already.
The point is he may or may not have been gay.
Okay.
And that's so, you know, with the other two, I said pretty definitively, that's the first gay couple. But this guy, I was like, maybe. And I say maybe because here's the deal. There's a poem, right? Like, so, you know, we're talking like long, like epic poem kind of thing. Story poem. That existed back then. It was a thing. And this poem is entitled, because more names that I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing right, King Neferkare and General Sassanet.
Ooh,
King Neferkare and General Sassanet.
Is this a fan fiction?
This is a fan fiction. And it is completely homoerotic. Like outright homoerotic.
It's a homoerotic fanfic.
It is a homoerotic fan. It is an ancient Egyptian homoerotic fanfic in which the pharaoh and his general have a relationship that is totally appropriate between a pharaoh and his general. Just, you know, just general, I need you to discuss your allegiance with me. Like, well, my pharaoh, if you would just take a look at the mouth of my blade. I don't know. I'm not good at writing homoerotic Egyptian fan fiction. Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. Point is, so it is a very overtly homoerotic fanfic. And this may or may not be about King Pepi II. There's like little clues in there that, because obviously you're not going to write a homoerotic fanfic about the pharaoh and use his real name. That's how you get in trouble.
Uh-huh.
You know, whether you know, or any kind of erotic fan, even if it's not homoerotic, if it's just erotic.
Well,
you can't write an erotic fanfic about the king and get away with it. So you use a different name.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that maybe it's time to move on to a different geographic region.
Time to move on.
Since we've already spent half the episode on this one.
What, on Egypt?
On just Egypt.
I would like to talk about Siwa just before we move on.
Who?
Siwa is not a person, it is a place. Remember, it was that oasis.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? I got it on the map. It's on the map.
Oh, boy. We get to use the map. We get to use
the map anyway. It's great. So, yeah, over here. So here's there's the Nile here, and there's the Sinai Peninsula, and this here, this little dot, that little thing right here, that is the Siwa Oasis. It's in the middle of the desert, but it's an oasis, water, and there's people who live there. The point is that in that community, they be gay. They totally be gay. And it's an isolated community, so it is isolated from the rest of Egypt by just miles and miles of desert. And to a great extent, they have a very unique culture in general. Generally speaking, their culture is rather unique compared to the rest of Egypt. And one of the things about their culture is they be gay. They also do the hetero sex, otherwise they wouldn't still be around. You know, you got to reproduce. But the gay sex between men is a thing that they do be having. From documented evidence all the way up into the 1940s, as far as I can tell. Probably still today, maybe still today. I don't know. Modernization tends to ruin things. But yeah, shall we move out of Egypt?
Let's move out of Egypt.
Let's go up to the Middle East. Let's go into Sumer. Because you know what I found there? So remember when I said
gays?
Well, I found gays. Because here's the thing. Remember how I said that generally speaking, before the 19th century, identifying as gay isn't really a thing? Mm-hmm. Well, here's where I contradict that. Because we're going to go to ancient Sumer, where we find that there was a whole caste of priests called the Galas. If you were a Gala, then that meant that you dedicated your life to the goddess Inannu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Inanna. Pronounce that wrong. It's all right. So you dedicated your life to the goddess Inanna. And part of dedicating your life to the goddess Inanna meant, first of all, you wore women's clothing. Second of all, you took on a woman's name. Thirdly, you spoke in the female dialect.
Oh, I didn't
Because
know that was a thing.
So random thing about Sumerian culture, there was a male dialect and a female dialect of Sumerian. And if you were a man, you spoke the male dialect. If you were a woman, you spoke the female dialect. Sumer, by the way, not unique in this. There are a couple other cultures throughout the world where there's a different dialect of the language used by men than there is used by women. And we're not talking about like grammatical gender, because a lot of languages have grammatical gender. No, I'm talking completely different words, completely different grammar. Not completely different; they're related, but but significantly different. Oh yeah, that was a thing. So if you were a gala, you say woman's clothes, woman's name, speak the female dialect, and you would engage in the gay sex with the other priests and with worshippers who wished to come to commune with the goddess. So this was a thing, and this existed in Sumer. It also existed later in Babylon, although with different names. Because first of all, they don't worship Inanna anymore in Babylon; they worship Ishtar, which is basically the same goddess, just different name and slightly different accoutrement. And different names for the guys. They weren't called galas anymore. They were called Asinu. Yeah, I remember that, right? Asinu. Yes, indeed. Side note: the cuneiform pictograph for Gala and Asinu is a glyph involving the glyph for the penis and the glyph for the anus combined into a single glyph.
Really?
Yes. So you know how
making that up.
I am not making that up.
Okay. All right. I believe you.
This is a thing. This existed. I also found out that in Assyrian culture, in Assyrian cultures, when you get the first law against gay sex, and it is specifically in the military. So if a soldier has sex with another soldier, that is forbidden.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yes, indeed. See, it's not even that you like. Actually, if a soldier were to have sex with a guy who wasn't a soldier, that was fine. That was all right. But you couldn't have sex with a fellow soldier. Which is, by the way, we're going to get into this theme a couple more times, because I've noticed this thing that there are some cultures that seem to be of the opinion that if your soldiers are having sex with each other, then they will fight better. And then there are other cultures that seem to be of the opposite opinion, that if your soldiers have sex with each other, then they're going to not fight very well at all. It's a thing. This is a thing. People are odd. People are weird. And
you know what I think we should do, by the way? I think that perhaps we should jump to one more culture and then wrap it up.
You want to wrap it up already? I'm actually getting into this. We're only 20 minutes in. This is theoretically Foxy's History Hour. I know I said I was going to call it early, end it early.
I really want you to stick to that.
Oh, you don't want to keep talking about?
I'm just very tired.
I know you're tired, but I'm after a few whiskeys, I'm actually starting to get a bit more. You can stop early if you really want.
I do.
Very well.
I'm very used to doing half-hour sets now. I know we've only done 4 technically, but now I want to do that's how I roll.
All right.
Okay, how about we settle for 40 minutes?
I'll see what I can do. I'll try. I will aim for 40 minutes. I will aim for stopping at 40 minutes, I promise. I will aim for that.
All right, well, continue talking about your thing then.
All right, so in Assyria, if a soldier could not have sex with a fellow soldier, and if you did, then the penalty was castration, which sucks. But that being said, homosexual intercourse generally throughout society in general in Assyria was permitted and allowed, and no problem. Which of course brings us, geographically speaking, to the big biblical elephant in the room, which is going to be the basis of everything Western that is ever said negatively concerning homosexuality, which is that my people decided to write something down, which whatever it does or does not mean, I would like to say, as a member of the Hebrew tribe, that thing that we wrote down was never meant to apply to anyone but us. I would just like to say that. The Hebrew Bible, or the Torah specifically, the Mosaic Code, is not meant to be a universal code that all people should live by. We wrote this thing for us. It is our legal code, and it is an evolving legal code. We do not understand it the same way that our ancestors did. We have our understanding of it has developed over time. And I really wish that the Christian world didn't quote my book when they said bad things about homosexuals.
All right,
so it would be nice.
If you haven't caught on, he's talking about the Leviticus thing.
The Leviticus thing.
A man shall not lie with another man.
Indeed.
This is the justification that's used in most Western circles to justify outlawing being gay, specifically man on man, but also anybody else really on the spectrum.
Side note, the Talmud says that two women having sex is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to throw that out there. That's I shouldn't say totally fine. The rabbis were very uncomfortable with it, but they were like, it's not forbidden. It's not like it's a God is okay with it. We're not. But God's fine with it, I guess. But yeah, so the verse in question.
Yeah, the verse in question has been used. It still is used by certain people in Congress to justify anti-gay legislation. And when it comes to, I guess you could call them the Abrahamic religions, some people call them the book religions, a lot of them have a very complicated, let's put it lightly, relationship with queer culture. Most of them are pretty uniformly against it. Catholicism is very against it. Most Islamic religions are also against it to one extent or another. It's just generally not accepted. No. And the thing is, these religions, or at least Christianity and Islam, are the dominant religions in most of the old world. And when it comes to Western imperialism, by the way, this anti-queer sentiment gets pushed onto everybody else that they colonize. So,
random side note, the mixed fabrics only applies to wool and linen. At least according to the rabbinic tradition and, you know, the guys who actually wrote the thing. But whatever. So, but going back to the gay.
Yeah, there's a thing in Christianity, I think back when it was just Catholicism, in which they repealed a lot of the stuff in Leviticus, like the shellfish thing and the pork thing, basically keeping kosher and all that other stuff. They removed it basically in order to convert more people.
Yeah.
So... And circumcision, they also remove.
And of course, I will say that it does kind of annoy me when it comes to the Christians in particular, how they because at least when it comes to Jews, we don't eat shellfish, thank you very much. And I actually pay attention to all those things. That is all part of a.
Do they wear mixed fabrics?
Yeah,
I mean, at least if you're an Orthodox Jew.
But that's the thing. It is all part of a very complex legal code and a legal system for an entire culture. And then Christianity just decides to pick and choose. And so that being said, so when it comes to the actual verse of man shall not lie with a man, I will admit, so historically within Jewish culture, that has generally been interpreted to mean that men are not allowed to have sex with each other, period. Mm-hmm. That is the general interpretation. That being said, there are outlying interpretations that say that no, this actually just refers to rape, or no, this actually just refers to temple sex, which is, as we just mentioned, was a thing in Sumerian and Babylonian culture. Mm-hmm. And so ancient Israelite culture was like, no, temple sex is not our thing. Sex in the bedroom, other things in the temple. So there's different ways to interpret this verse from a Jewish perspective, although generally speaking, it is generally interpreted to mean men are not allowed to have sex with one another. Although that being said, that also does not mean that being gay is forbidden. Like being gay is like there's something that you do. Being gay is something you are. Having sex with a man is something you do. I am heterosexual. That does not necessarily mean that I have sex with women.
Not to say that it's a good sentiment to have. It's still
not to say, but it's an important distinction. Mm-hmm. Also, another little biblical distinction that I think is also very much worth pointing out, and that is the word sodomite. I would like to address that word sodomite because it gets misused. Obviously, the Jew in the room is going to say, sodomite, sodomy, you are using that word wrong. What this comes from is that there's a story in Genesis about the evil, evil city of Sodom. The city of Sodom is a horrible, evil city. And our protagonist, Lot, lives in Sodom, and he's like the only good guy in Sodom. And there are a couple of angels who have come to take him out of the city because God is going to destroy the city because it's just so horrible and evil. And so the angels are there to rescue Lot. And while they are there, there is a scene. There is a scene in which a group of men, the Sodomites, the people of Sodom, a group of men of Sodom try to rape the angels. The Christians looked at this and said, oh, I see, Sodom's sin was gay, and these men were gay, and Sodom is gay, and therefore sodomite now means gay sex. Sodomite is somebody who has the gay sex, sodomy is the gay sex, and as a Jew, I would like to say you're using the word wrong. You are completely misinterpreting the story. The whole sin of Sodom was not that they were gay. The sin of Sodom was that they hated strangers and poor people. And this we know from other places in the Bible. There's like, for example, Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel. He goes to the children of Israel and he says, you are being just like the Sodomites. You're all acting like Sodomites. And just in case you didn't know what I'm talking about, what is a Sodomite? I'll tell you what a Sodomite is. It's somebody who hates poor people and hates foreigners. So he's being very, very clear as to what a Sodomite is. So when the men of Sodom try to rape the angels, this is not a gay sex thing. This is a terrorize the foreigner thing. This is because side note, rape isn't about sex anyway. Rape is about power. That generally, that's how it be. So if you're using the word sodomite to refer to gay people, you're using the word wrong. What a sodomite actually is somebody who hates poor people and hates foreigners. You know, the kind of people who usually hate the sodomites. So yeah, one more thing about ancient Israel before we move to Greece. So I think we should go to Greece. You want to go to Greece?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we'll go to Greece. So one more thing about ancient Israel, and that is David and Jonathan.
Oh, David and Jonathan.
David and Jonathan. So remember how I said earlier about how in Jewish culture, generally speaking, men having sex with men is frowned upon. But being gay is not a problem. And a loving relationship between two men is not a problem. It just must remain celibate. So that being said, David, which is to say, King David, King of Israel, you know that one, the one who killed Goliath. So basically, here's how it went. King Saul is facing the Philistines, and there's Goliath. And King Saul says, who will face Goliath? And David comes forward and says, I shall. And he comes forward with his glistening teeth.
And most people know this story.
Yeah. And he kills, here's the part of the story that you don't know. So he kills Goliath, right? There's a slingshot, kills Goliath. At that point, Saul has a son. Did you know that Saul had a son?
Yeah.
His name was Jonathan.
Oh.
Saul had a son named Jonathan. And Jonathan basically looked at David and went, oh, who is that amazing Hebrew? And Saul said, why, that is David, the son of Jesse. And Jonathan went, oh, a woof. And thus began their friendship. And there's a few stories involving their friendship. For example, eventually, so you know how King Saul eventually starts to hate David because he thinks that David is becoming too popular and might try to take his crown away. Especially since the prophecy that David will one day be king, and Saul isn't too happy about that, and so eventually Saul starts to hate David, and Saul tries to kill David, and Jonathan is the one who saves David on a couple of occasions, because of course Jonathan is Saul's heir, and Saul isn't gonna stop trusting Jonathan because he doesn't trust David anymore, but he still trusts his son, I guess, even though it's clear that his son is in love with David. But whatever. This puts Jonathan in a position where he can save David on a number of occasions. And they have a very close relationship, and it was most likely a romantic one. They do use, like, when they speak to each other, they do use the word love a number of times. And there is when Jonathan dies, eventually Jonathan dies, it's very tragic. It's in the battle with the Philistines, it's very sad. And David finds out that Jonathan has died. He writes a poem, a poem to his fallen friend. And in the poem, he says that your love was dearer to me than the love of women. So that
sounds pretty gay.
That sounds pretty gay. So it is entirely so. Now that being said, so David, by the way, would have been bi or possibly pan, because he did have a number of wives and concubines, and it's also clear from other stories that he did enjoy women. So he was probably.
Oh, you mean that one? The one where he
killed one of his.
Sleep with a lady.
Yeah, he does that. But the prophet tells him, "Bad boy, you've been naughty," and it thus becomes a morality tale.
He gets a slap on the wrist.
He does kind of get a slap on the wrist for it, but because he said he was sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Very sorry. So sorry. So yeah, point is that
God was like, "Oh, I just can't stay mad at you for too long." Anyway.
So the point of this, of course, is that we do have a loving romantic relationship between two men, one of whom is considered to be the greatest king of all Israel. But of course, within Jewish law, generally speaking, it is assumed that men are not allowed to have sex with each other. So there is a side. So the point of that, I do want to make that point, that in traditional Jewish culture, male-on-male sex, frowned upon, male-on-male love, not frowned upon. Which makes for some awkward times, but still. And I do wish to point that out, because when the Christians get their hands on it, they take it in a different direction. But that being said, let's go on to Greece for a bit. So I will stop soon. I promise.
Thank you.
I promise. I really do.
He's going to go over like an hour and a half and be like, I told you I would stop soon.
All right, so you want to go to Greece?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Greece. Let's talk a bit about Greece. So, going back to a world in which male sex is not forbidden, let's go to Greece, because in most. So first of all, when talking about Greece at the time was a culture, but it wasn't a country. It was a bunch of city-states. Each city-state was independent from each other.
Right. Most of you are probably familiar with Athens and Sparta.
Indeed.
And, Thebes and whatnot.
And basically, generally speaking, there are certain things that unite Greek culture, and one of those things is that, generally speaking, it is considered everybody's a homo, pretty much. Well, not entirely. I mean, they do have sex with women, otherwise there's not going to be any procreation.
And also men. Because there's also, we have two very famous examples here. Well, actually, we have a few, actually. So we have Sappho, who is...
on the lesbian side of things.
Yes. Her name is the basis of the term Sapphic, which means a love of women.
And she is from the Greek island of Lesbos.
Yes, which is also the origin of the name lesbian.
Indeed.
And now most historians now think that she was probably bi. But one thing is for certain is that she definitely had a lot of sex with women.
Well, she wrote love poems for them, like all the time.
Well, if you let me finish my sentence, we know this because she wrote a lot of love poems to them. So, there's also an aspect of Greek culture that should be addressed, which is that in ancient Greek culture, having sex with the same gender for both men and women was sort of just part of the culture.
Yeah.
And here's where we get to the aspect of this wasn't always a part of people's identities. It was just kind of like, eating tacos. It was
a thing that people did.
It's not like a thing of I have taco pride. It was just kind of a thing that you did,
So yeah, there was. So for example, it was considered a very, very normal thing if you were a Greek man, particularly if you were a Greek man of means and wealth, that you would adopt a younger man.
Yeah.
Side note: we must go.
We have to address this too.
Let us address the underage elephant in the room, and that is that in our modern society, 18 is considered to be the age of majority, and I am not going to debate that.
No,
but I am going to point out that it was not always the case in every culture, and that there were many cultures in history where the age of majority was a different number. And in Greece, it was a much lower number than that. It was like basically at that time 12 or 13. If you were 12 or 13, you were considered to be an adult.
Yeah, so there was a lot of not so great, pedophilia. Let's call it what it is.
Indeed.
With specifically young boys.
Yes.
And in Sparta, this is definitely probably the biggest example of that in ancient Greece.
Oh, and so in Sparta, it was like par for the course.
It was part
but
of
even
your
in places like
training
Athens,
as a warrior, actually.
But even in like Athens, it was still considered a normal thing, even if it wasn't like par for the course.
And we know this is definitely a thing. It's represented in mythology. There's records of it. There's paintings of it. Or actually in this case, it would be more like pottery. But still, it was a thing.
I see that Jean got a new power wheelchair today.
Yay!
But but this is the thing. If you were a well-to-do gentleman in Greece, then you would adopt a teenage fellow Greek boy, usually the son of a free man, usually the son of somebody who was of lower economic station than yourself, and you would take that boy on as a lover, and eventually that young boy would then grow up, and being your adopted son would inherit some of your stuff, and then he would become a wealthy Greek man of good reputation, and would eventually take on a young adopted lover, and the cycle continues. And this was normal. Although, by the way, did you know that specifically penile anal penetration was still considered to be unclean?
Yeah.
Instead, it would be penile between the thighs kind of dealio. And rubbing tips.
Do we have an age restriction on this thing?
This is history. I researched this.
Well, you didn't have to go into the specifics of how they were doing it.
Now, in Rome, on the other hand, penile anal penetration was totally fine, but it was very, very much dependent on your social class. In Rome, only a patrician could be the pitcher, so to speak. A slave could be the catcher. A younger man of freeborn status or a plebeian could be the catcher. But if you were a patrician, if you were a member of the upper class and you decided to play catcher, then that could it wasn't illegal, but it was very much frowned upon in society. You could definitely be ostracized for it. People would look sideways at you. You could lose your reputation, lose a lot of your standing in the community. But that being said, generally speaking, homosexual intercourse allowed in Rome as well as in Greece, and just kind of par for the course. It was a normal thing. The whole structure of an older, wealthier man taking on a younger, adopted youth was still a thing. Although penile anal penetration was now considered okay, as far as Romans were concerned, until, of course, Christianity comes along. Because Christianity comes along, and they took that Semitic book and opened it up and translated it into Greek, and then misinterpreted everything and just ran with it. And Theodosius, who is not the first Christian emperor, that would be Constantine. But Theodosius is the one who, in the late 4th century, starts making a lot of laws that basically make Christianity the law of the land. And he is the one who officially illegalizes gay sex in the empire. And thus it remains throughout the Middle Ages for the longest time until we basically get into the 20th century. Although Theodosius forbade male-male intercourse in the late 4th century, but the government kept collecting taxes from brothels that offered male services all the way until the 7th century because money. So yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yep.
I said I'd wrap up at 40 minutes, and it's 45 minutes. I went over 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
I got carried away talking about Greeks.
I know.
Because who doesn't like talking about Greeks?
It's okay. It's fine.
And by the way, Strawberry, to answer your question from earlier, Sagittarius, Gemini.
Yep.
Is true.
All right. So I think that's it for now.
Indeed.
We're sorry about the low energy for today's show, but it's hard to do this so soon after a fair.
Indeed. Kute Izmir makes a good point. They didn't have bidets. As far as why the Greeks believed penile anal penetration to be unclean. Because you can definitely look at it as very literally. Because that's where poop comes from.
Yes.
Right. So yeah. So we are cutting our history hour short to 45 minutes today. Because for those of you who were not here at the top of the hour, this past weekend, we had our first fair of the year, the Vermont Renaissance Fair. It was glorious. It was fun. It was magnificent, but it was also tiring.
Oh, thank you for the birthday wish.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So announcements for the future. So
if you want to see us in person, we will be performing this weekend at the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair. They are sold out of tickets for the one day that they are doing. But it will be on July 3rd if you've bought one.
Indeed. So come see us this Saturday, Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Fair. After that, what? Maine?
After that, we'll be in Acton, Maine for the Maine Renaissance Fair. We'll be there both weekends.
Montana,
which is a new one, which we haven't officially advertised on any of our
We haven't officially advertised because we didn't get to go until this past weekend.
Yeah, it's a new one. It's actually a brand new fair. For those of you who are out west and feel like driving to Montana, you can come and see us for only the second weekend. Just the second weekend.
Just the second weekend. And then we're going to Armistice, which is basically Pensic without a Pensic. In Western Pennsylvania.
In Western Pennsylvania, you can buy a ticket for that. I don't know if we'll have anything like
we won't have any shows per se, but we'll be there and we'll have our instruments and we'll be doing stuff.
And when it comes to after that, we'll be doing the Massachusetts Renaissance
Fair, and I don't want to think any further than that.
Neither do I.
That brings us to the beginning of August.
Sparta Renaissance Fair in September, which is a definite.
Yes. That is a definite.
The rest of the fall is still up in the air.
That's amorphous. Join us this Thursday at 6 o'clock for Cooking with Foxy, and join us at 9 o'clock for Foxy's Drinking Hour. And thank you very much for coming to Foxy's History Hour for our Pride Month episode.
Mm-hmm.
And we will see you again next week, which our next History Hour, we might change that to Wednesday.
We also, warning, we may not be doing the History Hour specifically with as much frequency as we have.
We might do the History Hour every other week.
We might do it every other week. We might do it once a month. We might do it, whenever we feel like it. But it's probably not going to be every single week. The cooking show and the drinking show, or the music show, I guess, we're going to try to do those consistently.
Indeed.
It's hard.
So, well, yes, at least this Thursday. Thursday
at 6, we'll be doing the cooking show.
Thursday at 9, we'll be doing the drinking show.
Yes.
And we shall see you.
Like and subscribe, go to Patreon, go to the Bandcamp, and all that other good stuff.
Yay.